Today I'd like to talk about perception and how our perception affects the way that we interact with others, specifically around communication. I'm going to start this by giving you a couple of definitions and then talking about the difference between those two concepts. I'm going to be talking about observation versus inference. Now, by definition, observation is to take note of an event or occurrence based on our use of some combination of the five senses. So we probably ought to agree upon what those are: taste, sight, touch, hearing, and smell. Those are the five senses. So again, to take note of an event or occurrence based on your use of some combination of the five senses. We're talking about data, raw data. That's all it is, not data analysis. Now, inference, in contrast to that, is data analysis. And inference is to draw conclusion based on observation. So what generally happens, or at least it does in my world, is I have some of the data, some of the information, though I may think that I have it all. And then what happens is I just draw a conclusion based on that information. Now, sometimes that can be problematic because, well, we may think that we have all of the information. Seldom do we have all of the information. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how inference is pretty harmless. And then we'll talk about how sometimes inference can be problematic. So I'm going to draw your attention here. I'm in my home office, and this here is a chair. And this chair here is in my home office. So I can touch the chair. I can actually hear it, yes. Okay? I can see it. I can No, don't lick the chair. So let's just say with 3 of my 5 senses, that chair is there, I know it is, that's observation. Now, in contrast to this notion of observation is the idea of inference. Now, it would be easy to infer, again, inference is to draw a conclusion based on observation, that chair belongs to me. No harm, no foul, and it's easy to think that. However, you don't really know if that chair belongs to me. There could be other reasons why that chair is here in my office. I could have dragged it in here just to prove a point. Probably not. I'm much too lazy for that. While I was asleep last night, aliens could have come in and smuggled it into my office. Who knows? But those are examples. This idea of inference, it allows for the possibility that there might be other reasons for that chair to be there. Another example and by the way, that's an example of harmless inference. We do it every day. If we didn't infer things, we would be paralyzed. We couldn't leave the house. Inference is one of the ways that we make sense of the world around us. Here's another example. I'm guessing many of you drive. If you don't drive, I'm guessing most of you have actually been in a car. So let's just say you're driving up the freeway and you look over and there's a dude pacing you in his car. And you sort of look over, you're both doing 65 headed up the freeway. And dude, we've all seen dude. He's the guy that's got his finger buried in his nose all the way up to the second socket. Because, well, no one can see you 3 feet away with glass only in between you. But you know who I'm talking about. And so you're driving along. Here's the thing, okay? You don't have any evidence that at some point in time, dude isn't going to look over at you. Okay, so here's this. I'm dude. I got my hand on the wheel. Okay, and he looks over at you like this, you've got no evidence that he isn't going to do that, take the wheel and go, and crash right into you. Right? You're inferring that he won't. You are drawing a conclusion based on observations. And that's allowing you to go out and make your way around in the world around you. So again, observation a lot of times is harmless, but sometimes in human interactions it can be problematic. The way that I connect with that is in the classroom. I teach on ground in the classroom a lot. I may have a student who just isn't acting right. And the observation would be, she's not making eye contact with me. She doesn't the observation would be she's not making eye contact with me. She's not taking notes. She's got a look on her face that confuses me. Okay, those are observations, but the inference would be that maybe she doesn't like me, she's not interested, maybe she's not smart. Again, I only have so much information, and then the human in me wants to make sense of that, and that's inference. Now, what's problematic is that's a relationship, and I could make stuff up in my head that could make it difficult for me to be helpful to her, because I've already figured out for her who she is and what she's about. That is an example of when inference can be problematic. Now, that's all very interesting, but there's always a few bright students that are going, well, how does this relate to the public speaking context? Well, what it has to do with is on both ends, both as the sender, the speaker, and as the receiver. Okay, so as the speaker, there's this idea of audience analysis, and we'll talk more about that later in the course. But when you're looking out across a room full of faces when you're speaking, it's a good idea to have a sense of who is your audience. But that can really be problematic. The reason why you would want to have a sense of who your audience is to figure out what you want to talk about, how you want to talk about it. Keep in mind, you don't know. Usually you don't have a clue. You need to know that you don't know. And so don't presume, don't infer that you know what your audience is thinking or how they're processing that information. That is important. So, and then from the audience standpoint, because hopefully through this you will learn to be more effective consumers of media, including public speeches, is as a audience member, be very, very careful of the inferences that you draw on the messages that are being sent, because there's always more than one way to take things. So I hope that this little lecture has given you a sort of an understanding of this notion of observation and inference, and how those concepts affect the way that we perceive the world around us, including our social interactions and communication.